Dave Hughes here, and got a gentleman here. I enjoyed talking to him. He may not remember it, but when his book came out back in 2018, I interviewed him here on SuperTalk. George Malvaney joins us. How you doing today, sir?
Doing great, Dave, and I do remember that. I think it was at Nandy's Candy where we were broadcasting from.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Right up there next to the front window.
That's right.
And both of us having trouble talking because we were salivating looking at the candy. That's the problem with doing a broadcast from there. You're hungry the entire time. Still have a copy of your book at home, Cups Up. Because I tell people this every so often when it comes up, I'll get asked, so what's the most interesting person you've interviewed? And you're on the list every time because you have a story and a half, my friend. Just give the 60-second elevator pitch capsule summary of your story.
Well, the title of the book is Cups Up, and then the subtitle, how I got to think back, organized a clavern, plotted a coup, survived prison, graduated college, fought polluters, and started a business. So the title tells a lot, and that was University Press of Mississippi came up with that subtitle.
Well, and it's very descriptive, and if that doesn't get your attention, you might need to seek medical attention. Your pulse may be wavering on you because it's a story that has a little bit of everything, but it gives you, I'm pretty confident in saying, a unique perspective on what's going on societally right now in America, with the conversation turning to violence, turning to rhetoric that leads to violence and promotes violence. And your take on whether or not, I know the answer to this question, whether or not that's a good idea, whether or not that's going to lead to anywhere good.
Well, you know, what I have said in my op-ed I recently did for USA Today is going to lead to prison. The people that the Tyler Robinsons of the world and others, the only thing, the change you're going to bring about is the change in your own lifestyle, and you're going to end up in prison if you commit violence such as that for political reason. And that's why I've put the op-ed out. Is there maybe there's some folks here and there that are contemplating it that haven't yet made that jump, and I want them to know it's a terrible place. It's going to lead nowhere but an 8x10 cell, and possibly for the rest of their life.
Well, you have a really good perspective based on experience on this topic. My question to you is, what leads someone down that path? What leads from someone waking up and watching bad TV and going to work and, you know, having a sandwich to getting in the position where you're trying to hurt and or kill other people for a cause? How do you make that journey? How does that happen?
Well, you know, it's all part of the radicalization process, and it often starts with listening to the wrong voices, or being influenced by the wrong people or the wrong types of people that are promoting political activism and through violence. And, you know, that's a case that we're beginning to see more and more of on both the right and the left. And I think it's a pattern that seems to be increasing. When you see someone like Charlie Kirk getting assassinated, and then you had the House member in Minnesota where she was killed in her home. It's a bad path that we're going down right now, and it's not isolated to one side or the other. It's right and left.
And that, I think, is what's most disturbing, because if it was just, you know, in one direction, that would be one thing, but it kind of feeds off of itself when everybody is engaging in this kind of talk and this kind of action, doesn't it?
Absolutely it does. And, you know, that's what you could see now is are we going to see copycat killings? Are you going to see revenge, people trying to get revenge for it, for either one or the other? And that's a bad path we're on. And, you know, you see so many that are in their youth, and I can remember way back in mine when I was 19, 20 years old, and I was on that radical path. It's hard for me at this point in time in my life to see just what led me down it. It's just hard to make sense of it and reason with it at this point in time. But it's just something that so many that think they're going to effectuate change through violence, and they're tend to go down that path, and it's a wrong path. It's a bad path, and at the end of the day, they're not going to accomplish anything. They're going to ruin their life, their families' lives. You have to think about that on both sides. Of the one, if they commit acts of violence, there's the victim's family, their own family, and the Tyler Robinsons of the world are just he's gonna rot away in prison. He'll never see daylight again. And those are the kind of people I'm trying to get to and get a message to. Don't do it.
Well, and the thing is, people, I think, have a misconception. They think that, going back to what I said a minute ago, you just wake up one day and that's who you are. It's a series of baby steps that sometimes you don't even realize you're headed down that path until you reach the end, right?
Yeah, it's a transformation that occurs over time. You know, I went through the transformation once, becoming radicalized, and then I moved out of that, and that took time too. You don't just wake up one day. You know, I didn't just one day all of a sudden become a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and then likewise, one day I did not repudiate that. It just took time and a lot of hard work on my part. I think the harder part was moving the transformation away from that lifestyle and from those people.
Well, especially in your case, because, and I remember this from your book, you made it pretty high up in the Ku Klux Klan, didn't you?
Well, I formed a chapter, a claver aboard a Navy ship. I don't know if that was really high up, but it was aboard the USS Concord, and that would have been in 1978, and was discharged from the Navy about a year and a half later as a result of that.
And you rubbed elbows with some pretty influential people in that movement, though, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, after that, I knew pretty well. I knew Sam Bowers, I knew Byron D. LeBeckwith, or we called him D-Lay, and others. But those were some pretty rough characters from the Klan of the '60s. I knew Sam Bowers quite well.
Well, the old proverb, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, applies to this. And the problem is when you get there, you're tired. It takes longer to walk back, which is kind of what you were saying there. But taking little innocuous steps, and you think it's no big deal, this is just, the way things are supposed to be. I'm supposed to, make sure everybody knows what I think and they agree with it or else. And then you wind up in federal prison like you did.
Yeah, obviously it's not a good place to be, and I served time in 5 different prisons, and the worst of which was the maximum security joint at the U.S. Penitentiary in Atlanta. And I had a real transformation there. I spent a lot of time in lockdown in the hole and in solitary, and had a lot of time to self-analyze and see what what I had done wrong in life to end up in prison. I had months of laying in a cell with nothing to do but stare at the walls and get out twice a week for 30 minutes to take a shower. So you have a lot of time to think what led me there. And obviously it was the people I was associating with. It was a bad crowd, and I knew then that I was going to have to change the crowd I was running with, the people I was associating with, the people I was listening to, the people who had influence on me. I needed to get away from that crowd, or I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison. I would have gotten out eventually and done, if I'd gone back to hanging with that crowd, I would have ended up back there. So I made an effort at that point in time in Atlanta. I really made a decision to move on and with my life in a better way, and that's what we need to try and get to some of our youth now that's becoming radicalized, where they realize the path they're on is a bad path and they're going to end up in prison.
Can you hang around through the break?
Absolutely.
George Malvaney got a great perspective on, well, basically all of this that's going on right now. We'll continue to pick his brain when we return in the Element Wealth Studios on Middays right after this. Keep it here. Mississippi Middays in the Element Wealth Studios. Dave Hughes here, George Malvaney with us. And right before the break, you were talking about your toughest stint in prison, and that you really started to sort some things out while you were in solitary. Do you think you would have made that same journey back if you hadn't been forced to not have those outside influences and voices coming at you continuously?
Well, I'd like to think I would, but I think it would have been a much longer process to move away from those radicalized beliefs and thoughts that I was having. What prison is almost, it just jump-started me to moving toward a better path. I mean, it was not a place I wanted to be, and I'd made a conscious decision that when I got out, I was not coming back. And, so I think, yes, I think it could have happened with age. When I say with age comes wisdom. But I think I moved away relatively quickly, and it took a while. It took years, even after prison, to really break those bonds and move on. It was a long-term transformation, but it did start in prison. And I met a lot of all sorts of people in prison. You end up becoming friends with people you absolutely despised before you went. I was hanging out and playing cards with murderers, bank robbers, armored car robbers, kidnappers, and so forth. I can remember sitting there one night. I was playing a game of hearts. A group of us were playing with a guy that had killed an entire family, including a toddler. And I thought at that time, I said, what am I doing hanging out, sitting here playing cards with somebody that is just a horrible human being that would kill a family, including a toddler? And that was a moment in time for me that says, I need to get away from this environment. You need to get away from people that are bad people. And you need to associate with better people. Of course, in prison, it's a relative term. I mean, everybody's in there for something bad. But I did tend to, I made friends with some of them was a pretty rough bunch. And but after prison, when I was released, I cut ties with almost all of them. There's only two to this day that I have remained friends with. One of them was in prison for bank robbery, and he's now a medical doctor and has had a very successful career. Getting back to that, I think I would have made that path away from the radicalized beliefs, but it would have been a much longer and more difficult journey.
Well, and the reason why I ask is, in this era, you didn't have social media to influence you back in the 70s. It was all personal interaction. Whereas now it is easy as it can be for people to become radicalized by listening to the wrong people. And sometimes we just kind of need to put ourselves in solitary, if you will, turn that off for a while and quit listening to all these people encouraging you to have these feelings and act out these feelings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Social media has certainly changed the scope of these extremists. They're on both sides. They're reaching out. They're looking for followers. They're trying to get more people to follow in their footsteps and do things. And many of these, it's a terrible message that they're sending when you start preaching violence and sometimes it's done subtly. It may not be. It may be done somewhat overtly at times, and then sometimes it's a very subtle message that they're putting out, pushing violence, and trying to break those bonds with those people. I'm not going to sit here today and think I'm going to, or when I've done some op-eds, that I'm going to change anyone's beliefs, and that's not what I'm trying to do. You are what you are, and I'm not foolish enough to think I'm going to have that kind of influence on someone. What I'm trying to say, and what I think you do, is you better realize the path you're on. You commit violence, and you are going to prison. That's where you're going to end up. You better think about that if you're 18, 19, 20, 21, or however old you are. It doesn't matter. You're going to end up in prison, and it is a terrible place to be. And it's not just the conditions of prison. There's a feeling you get when you lose your freedom. It is like that when you're absolutely just locked away and you have no control over your life. There's no way to describe how bad that feeling is. And don't do it. If you're thinking about committing acts of violence, don't do it. You are going to go to prison.
Well, and the other thing that I love about your story, because it is a story of redemption. After you got out of school, you went on, you graduated, you added executive, you added environmental protectionist to your resume. You've done some really good things with your life, and I think you are one of the poster children for it's never too late. You've never messed up so badly that you can't turn things around, right?
Yeah, it's correct. If you look at my resume, I'm a former Klansman. Let me go back up more than that. I'm a high school dropout. I'm a former Klansman. I was discharged from the Navy for forming a Klan unit on board a ship. I'm an ex-con, ex-felon. When you put all those things in, that's often hard to come. There's a lot of stigma, social stigma that comes with those. With all of those, or each of those, and it took a lot of hard work to get away from that. Now I had my felony conviction set aside because I was sentenced. I was only 20 years old when this went down, but I had it set aside under the provisions of the Federal Youth Corrections Act. So that gave me a big advantage not having the felony conviction. I was arrested in April of '81, and I had it set aside in April of '87. But yeah, it's to get through those things, it's possible, and it takes determination. It takes hard work, and above all, you just got to get away from associating with bad folks. That's a big part of it.
Well, and that's the thing. It doesn't matter where you think you're at. It doesn't matter who it is that's influencing you negatively. And sometimes what makes that so difficult now is some of those bad influences, they're close friends, they're family members, they're in-laws, they're spouses. This isn't just random strangers out there. At the very least, you have to stop listening to them and letting them influence you to go down a path that you don't need to go down. I'm not going to sit here and say, everybody, stop talking to your family. That's not the point of this. The point is you have to recognize those people that not necessarily because they think they're doing something bad, they don't. But they're trying to influence you to think like them, and that might not be where you want to be. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, you can't choose, the old saying goes, you can't choose your family. You can't choose family, but you can choose your friends. And you need to choose friends that are not promoting violence. People that are not, you need friends that have a positive impact on you and the world around them. Those are the kind of people you want to associate with, and it's hard to get away if it's family members, and often it is family members. I didn't have any in my family that were promoting that, but I knew many people that did, and you got to learn to tune them out, push them away, and move in a different path. Move a different path, because you're going to where it leads you. You listen to them, you got some bad times coming.
Your op-ed in USA Today was fantastic, published back on October 6th, I think it was. And go look it up. Go search it up and read it for yourself, because it's a really good message coming from someone who has been there. Like I said, you've got a lot of authority to speak on this particular subject, and it's not about saving anyone, George. It's about giving people something to think about in regards to themselves and what direction they want to move their life toward, because that's all. When you get right down to it, that's all you can do is at least give them a starting place. Give them that one day in solitary and let them work from there, right?
Yeah, probably more than one day. Give them a few months like I had.
That'll change a lot of things and a lot of thought patterns, too. But that's what we need these days, I'm afraid. George Malvaney, always enjoy talking to you. You're a fascinating person to me. And I just want to say, if no one has said this to you in a while, I just want to say, good job. You are a shining example of what can be done when you put your mind to it. You did a good job. You're a good man. Good job.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come on the show.
Anytime. Go look up his book, Cups Up. It's available wherever fine books are sold, and occasionally where bad books are sold. They just messed up and ordered his, too. They've got it there. Go get you one and read it, because it is a fascinating story. You will enjoy it. George, take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Dave.
We will continue on Middays in the Element Wealth Studios right after this. Keep it here.